Hello. I had a very different video planned for today, but given the recent passing of Éliane Radigue, or at least the news that came out yesterday about it, I felt I had to make a video about her. I think it's fair to say that very few people have influencnced my life, at least people that I don't know personally, as much as Éliane Radigue. This video is going to be a bit rambling. I didn't have any time to put together coherent thoughts, but I still wanted to share something. I first encountered the work of Éliane Radigue I just looked up, it was 2013 when this was re-released, Adnos, on CD. And at the time, I really was intrigued by her work. I really wanted to get into it. And it was so glacial and slow and alien, and it was hard to know how to enter her sound world. And that's the thing with Radigue. There's no right place to enter her world. Her whole life is devoted to a very singular vision of music, from her very earliest works in the 60s with microphones and feedback through her kind of most renowned period in the 70s and 80s, where she used her ARP 2500 synthesizer to make her music, things like Adnos, Trilogie de la Mort, and other releases like that. Jetsun Mila are kind of the standout releases there. And then through her later work, one thing about Eliane that I think is so incredible is how often she wholly reinvents herself. In the middle of the 70s, I believe, she stopped making music for a while to pursue Buddhism. And in fact, it's Eliane's work, perhaps in a somewhat indirect way, but which led me to Buddhism myself. Eliane also completely changed how she made music later in life. In around the late 2000s or something, when she was really starting to gain renown for her work that had not really gained too much notoriety in her life, she decided to leave her synthesizers behind and try to make her music acoustically. For someone later in their life to almost turn away from everything they know and try to do something so completely different is just an incredible thing for someone to do. And when I first heard of this acoustic period, I was totally mystified. Like, how is she going to make her music with a cello? It seemed insane to me. But she did it. I was able to see live performances of her Ocam Océan work with a quartet in a room with a bunch of people, and it was remarkable to see how she was able to translate her patient, minimalist, psychedelic sound world to this completely new medium. And I just think that anyone who makes such a radical change late in life, almost rejecting everything you've known, but at the same time synthesizing everything you've learned into a new path forward, is just the sign of just a remarkable person. And Eliane really was a remarkable person. When I started making videos again, just a week ago, I had to unpatch my Surge because it's been basically in the same patch for months, which is a patch I'm going to share with you now. It's a patch inspired by Eliane and her methods, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what those methods are, the kinds of methods that as far as we can tell, she used in her electronic period to create her tones. It's funny making this YouTube video about Éliane Radigue because it makes me think of something. It makes me think of YouTube videos always telling you to, like, put your headphones on. And for Eliane's music, it's funny, in the 70s when a lot of her contemporaries like Morton Subotnick and Suzanne Ciani were really focused on things like quad, distributing sounds in space. Quad was kind of the big thing in the early 70s. Eliane kind of went the opposite way. I don't know where I read this, but I distinctly remember hearing something about her referring to her music as dripping off of the walls, of like oozing off of the walls. Her music really fills an acoustic space, a room. And listening to her music is such a psychedelic experience in the sense that if you move your head slightly, you perceive the sound differently. And moving your physical body through her sound field creates its own distinct experience. And that's just something that is incredibly remarkable about her work. So listen to this video, obviously, however you want. But I would ask you to, as you explore, to maybe play it on speakers, project it into a space, and just kind of turn your head, explore the space, and see how things change. There's lots of very interesting movements that happen, and to me, at least, it's a crucial part of what I find so fascinating about her work. It's kind of like, a choose your own adventure book or something. You put on this monolithic piece of music and explore it kind of in your own way. Her music also is the epitome of active listening music. This is not music that you can just put on in the background and like do work to. Or her music, it has to be listened to attentively. So in this video, I just want to look at that kind of Radigue-inspired patch that I've had set up for months now, that I just kind of go and record every now and again. The way Radigue made her work, especially during that period, you can see this in the GRM video that features her, is something that I find super inspiring because it reflects a lot of the way I make music, which is to say that just kind of making a sound and recording it for a long time. And then what she would do is stitch sounds together. She would have a distinct sound making process where she would make sounds and record it to tape. And then she would, armed with a stopwatch and I suppose a small mixer, would then assemble the final piece by playing one sound, fading it in, and then cross-fading it with another sound. And, doing this for about the length of the piece and having in her mind how long each section should last. At some point, when I heard that was a huge revelation to me, because that's basically how I make music. And I find it super inspiring and really fun to just play with this patch that I'm going to show you, every day, kind of change things a little bit until it sounds like something interesting, and record it for 15, 20 minutes, and then for use sometime later to be assembled with other sounds and create something new. So yeah, in this video we'll look at that, and then we'll return to our regular scheduled programming. It's a bit of a bummer because also earlier this year we lost another probably titan of this channel. I mean, I've mentioned Roland Kane on this channel a lot, but I would say probably the top three people whose work this channel is indebted to would be Roland Kane, Éliane Radigue, and then Jean-Claude Eloy, who also passed earlier this year. And I will for sure make a video about him, or many videos about him and his work. But for now, let's look at this Radigue patch. So there's a lot that we don't know about Eliane's process, but we do know a handful of things. One is that early in her artistic career, she explored feedback with microphones and loudspeakers, and that continuously drove her work for the rest of her life, at least the tones that she got out of that. And that when she encountered the synthesizer, she liked the fact that the synthesizer allowed her to recreate those tones, but to have a wider palette of tones to play with. We have a graphical we have a basically patch diagram from her for the piece Eliane. I don't know. That's probably the most difficult. I think that's probably the most difficult to pronounce piece, and I have no idea what it means or refers to. But this video is definitely inspired by the work of Daniel Silliman, who published both a thesis and a journal article, sort of trying to get to the bottom of this patch and understand better how Eliane made her music. So thank you to Daniel, and I will link those resources below so you can take a look. It's definitely worth taking a look at if you're interested in Eliane's work. I even sketched the patch recently for a friend. Here it is. This patch in particular. It's not an exact replica of this patch that we're talking about, this Eliane patch, the one that Daniel went into in his paper. Take some creative liberties, but that's kind of the point, right? To make it your own and use this as a starting point to create sounds and explore sounds in your own way. So one of the foundational building blocks here are 4 oscillators grouped in pairs that are doing circular FM. And that's easy enough for us to do. So on the surge, we will take a dual PCO and then these 2 paper face oscillators and just hook them up together doing circular FM. So we'll take the sine wave from one PCO and go into the exponential frequency input of the other, and then the other way around. And we'll do basically the same on these oscillators. We'll take the sine input of one and go into the FM input of the other, and then cross that over. So this will get us some FM tones. Let's hear how they each sound. Let's just take the sine output here and go into the mixer and listen to this tone. That's how that one sounds. You can play with the frequencies and the modulation depths to your own taste. And then for the other pair, let's listen to how that sounds. So yeah, these is kind of the building blocks that we're going to construct this out of. So next, let's blend these pairs using a crossfader, just to be able to hear both of them simultaneously. So we'll take this pair and go to input 1. We'll take this pair and go to input 2. And then we can listen to the output. And adjust the balance to taste. So what we want to do here is create a sound that's full of internal life, a really interesting, harmonically rich tone that just has a lot going on. And maybe it's imperceptible at first blush. If you listen to it through one perspective, it may sound as if the tone is steady and not doing anything. But if you change your perspective and really lock into the sound on its own terms, the sound really springs to life and starts to reveal itself. So the key to a lot of this is going to be this circular FM, amplitude modulation, ring modulation, and also feedback patching. So first, let's amplitude modulate this crossfader output here, and I'm going to use one of these other oscillators to do the amplitude modulation. And why don't we listen to that? We can just listen to kind of everything as we assemble it. And let's cascade that into a subsequent amplitude modulation. This one was being amplitude modulated by this pair of oscillators, so let's take this pair and amplitude modulate in the second in this series. Now we've got a lot more harmonics going on. We can run that through a low-pass filter to kind of shave off some of those upper harmonics. And then let's just throw that, well, let's just listen to that. Open the filter. Turn up the resonance. Obviously, Eliane used the ARP resonator filter to great effect in her work. And so using filters and playing with the resonance settings and really patiently listening to how all of the tones and frequencies interact together is really at the core of her music. So I'm actually going to throw this tone into a mixer. We know that we're listening to two of these oscillators directly coming through the crossfader. So let's take the other ones, the ones we aren't hearing directly quite yet, and put them through a ring modulator together. So that one and this one, they're doing amplitude modulation of the other ones, but now we'll listen to those directly through the ring modulator. And sure, let's just listen to that first. And we can send that to a second filter to kind of sculpt that tone a little more. And so now we can mix these two tones together and hear what they sound like. I'm just going to add a touch of reverb from the spring reverb down here. And so if we take the output there, and where's another cable? And go from the output of our mixer to the spring reverb, we can start to mix these two paths together and listen to the result. One thing I, of course, like to add to this at the end is a resonant equalizer to just play with these sounds even more. So instead of going straight to the mixer, I'll go through the resonant equalizer and I will take the comb filter outputs and take them to individual channels on the mixer here. I will pan them left and right, and we will listen to the result. Very, very subtle movements on the resonant EQ make huge differences. And since I'm currently making a video, I can't really get lost in this tone in the proper way. This is kind of the kernel of a sound that can be made on really any kind of modular synthesizer environment. You can do it in Kemo or Reactor or Bitwig even, or VCV Rack, I'm sure. And really start to just listen and play, making subtle adjustments to see how things change. The tuning of these oscillators is obviously critical, as is the tuning of the filters. And so when I had this patch set up for months, I would just kind of play with the frequencies of oscillators. Modulation depths. To find new tones to explore. I even made, somewhat as a kind of little challenge to myself, I tried to make this type of patch on a polysynth, such as the Moog Muse here. And every morning I'll just come over to the Muse, press hold on the keyboard, and then press 5 notes and listen to what happens.